Emily Carter sat by the window of her family's suburban home, watching the golden evening light spill across the front yard. The house was quiet except for the distant clinking of dishes in the kitchen where her mother, Linda, moved about. Her father, Robert Carter, wasn't home yet. He rarely was these days, and even when he came back, he seemed to bring more of his work than himself. That afternoon, the sound of a car pulling into the driveway startled her. She peeked through the blinds, curious, and saw a tall man stepping out, his broad frame carrying an air of calm confidence. His dark skin seemed to catch the sunlight, and his stride was steady, almost commanding. When he knocked on the door, her mother answered with a delighted gasp. "Marcus, it's been so long." Emily tilted her head, trying to place the name. Her mother hugged him warmly and ushered him inside. He was introduced as Marcus Johnson, her father's old friend from years ago. He had been traveling, building his life elsewhere. But now he was visiting for a few weeks. When Marcus's gaze fell on Emily, his smile widened in recognition. "Child, come here, let me see how much you've grown," he said warmly. Emily hesitated for a moment before stepping closer. There was something about the way his voice carried, deep, smooth, reassuring, that made her heart flutter unexpectedly. He wasn't just being polite, he was really looking at her, noticing her. She wasn't used to that. "You've turned into quite a young lady," he added with a gentle nod, his eyes kind but firm. Emily felt her cheeks warm, not knowing exactly why. Dinner that night felt different. Her father sat at the table, scrolling through his phone between bites, half listening to her mother's attempts at conversation. Emily, as always, stayed quiet, but Marcus noticed. "So, Emily," he said, turning toward her, "what are you studying these days?" Emily looked up, surprised that someone was directly asking her something with genuine interest. I've been working on some literature essays. I really like writing." Marcus leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Writing, huh? That's a powerful gift. You know, not everyone can capture feelings in words. What do you like to write about?" Emily blinked, her words stumbling. No one had asked her that before, not even her parents. "Mostly stories, sometimes poetry." "That's wonderful," Marcus said, smiling, his eyes lighting with approval. "Stories shape people more than they realize. Don't ever stop." Emily felt her chest tighten with something she couldn't name. Her father mumbled, "She's always scribbling in those notebooks," without looking up for his phone. But Marcus didn't dismiss her. He kept his attention fixed on her like she mattered. As the evening went on, Emily found herself speaking more than she usually did at the table. Marcus asked questions, encouraged her, and listened with patience. Linda seemed pleased, enjoying the reunion, while Robert remained in his bubble. Later, when the plates were cleared and her parents were busy in the kitchen, Emily passed through the living room where Marcus was seated. He looked up from an old photo album Linda had set on the coffee table. "You've got a thoughtful way about you, Emily," he said. "Not many people your age do. You see more than you let on." Emily paused, her heart beating faster. She didn't know how to respond, so she just gave a small smile and murmured, "Thank you." That night, lying in bed, Emily stared at the ceiling. She replayed Marcus's words in her mind, "Don't ever stop." She thought about the way he had looked at her when she spoke, how he had given her the kind of attention her own father rarely did. It made her feel alive, noticed, as though someone finally recognized the parts of her she usually hid away. She hugged her pillow, confused. Marcus was just her father's friend, a guest in their house. He was older, wiser, someone who belonged to another world entirely. And yet there was something in his voice, something in his presence, that unsettled her in ways she couldn't explain. The night grew deeper, and with every hour her thoughts tangled further. She closed her eyes, telling herself she was being silly, but the truth pressed against her heart. Something had shifted the moment Marcus had said, "Child, come here," and no matter how much she tried, she couldn't push that moment away. The next few days passed quietly, yet for Emily, nothing felt the same. Marcus had a way of filling the house with an unspoken energy. When he laughed with her mother in the kitchen, his voice carried warmth. When he sat in the living room reading the newspaper, his calm presence seemed to steady the space. Emily found herself noticing him constantly, even when she tried not to. Robert was away most of the time, leaving early for work and returning late at night. Emily had grown used to that absence, but now she felt the contrast even more strongly. When her father wasn't home, Marcus was there, asking her about school, offering advice, listening in a way that felt rare. One afternoon, Emily was on the porch, sketching in her notebook, when Marcus stepped outside with a cup of coffee. He glanced at her page and smiled. "Writing again?" She nodded shyly. "Just a little poetry." "Would you read it to me?" he asked, lowering himself into the chair beside her. His tone was calm, encouraging, not demanding. Emily hesitated, her fingers curling around the notebook. She had never read her words aloud to anyone before, but something in Marcus's expression, patient, genuine, gave her the courage. Slowly, she began to read a short verse about loneliness, about being unseen in the midst of a crowd. When she finished, her heart raced, waiting for him to laugh or dismiss it. But Marcus didn't. He looked at her for a long moment, then said softly, "That's beautiful, Emily. You've captured something most people can't even admit to themselves." Her throat tightened. "It's just how I feel sometimes." "I know," Marcus said, leaning back in his chair. "Sometimes the people we expect to see us never really do. And that kind of loneliness, it can weigh heavier than silence itself." Emily felt her chest ache. She had never heard an adult speak that way, as if he understood exactly what she meant. Their eyes lingered on each other a little too long before she quickly looked away. From then on, their conversations became longer, deeper. Marcus told her stories about his travels, about places far from their quiet neighborhood. He spoke of mistakes he had made in life, choices he wished he could undo. Emily listened, drawn not just to his words, but to the honesty in them. One rainy evening, while Robert was working late and Linda had gone to visit a neighbor, Emily found herself in the living room with Marcus again. They sat across from each other, the steady patter of rain against the windows filling the silence between them. "You remind me of myself when I was your age," Marcus said after a while. "Curious, searching, restless, wanting someone to notice." Emily's voice trembled as she replied, "No one ever really does. My dad, he doesn't even know half of who I am." Marcus's gaze softened. "That's not your fault. Sometimes people get lost in their own worlds, and they forget to look closely at the ones they love." She swallowed hard, her emotions rising. The way he spoke, the way he seemed to understand her without judgment, felt like a lifeline she didn't know she needed. The room grew quiet again. Emily fiddled with the edge of her sleeve, her heart pounding. She wanted to say more, to confess how his presence made her feel alive in ways she couldn't explain. Instead, she whispered, "You make it feel like I matter." Marcus leaned forward slightly, his expression serious. For a moment, his hand moved toward hers, as though to offer comfort. Emily froze, breath catching. His fingers brushed against hers lightly, and neither of them pulled away immediately. The air between them thickened with something unspoken. Emily's pulse hammered in her ears. She knew this was dangerous, that lines were blurring in ways they shouldn't. And yet, the warmth of that simple touch sent a rush of emotion through her. Marcus was the first to withdraw, his voice steady but low. "You do matter, Emily, more than you realize. But you have to be careful what you let your heart believe." Her eyes burned, though she wasn't sure if it was shame or longing. She nodded, unable to speak. The rain continued to fall outside, the world blurred by shadows and water. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. She replayed every word, every glance, every moment they had shared. She knew what was happening inside her heart, even if she couldn't admit it out loud. She was caught between guilt and desire, between knowing this was wrong and feeling like it was the first time anyone had truly seen her. And as much as she tried to push it away, the truth remained. Marcus had become more than just her father's friend. He had become the secret spark she carried, dangerous and impossible to ignore. The days that followed carried a strange tension in the air. Emily moved through the house with a mixture of anticipation and unease, her thoughts always circling back to Marcus. Every glance, every word exchanged, seemed to carry a weight far heavier than before. And yet, neither of them dared to speak of it openly. Robert finally began to notice the shifts, though he could not quite name them. One evening at dinner, the atmosphere felt unusually strained. Robert sat across the table, his eyes flicking between Emily and Marcus. He asked questions he rarely bothered with before, his voice laced with suspicion. "So, Marcus, what have you been doing with yourself these days?" Marcus answered calmly, but his tone was subdued, careful. Emily kept her gaze on her plate, feeling the tension coil tighter with every second. Linda, oblivious, tried to keep the conversation flowing, but Robert's narrowed eyes said more than words. Later that night, when Emily retreated to her room, Linda quietly followed. She sat on the edge of Emily's bed, brushing her daughter's hair back gently. "You've been different lately," she said softly. "Quieter but restless. Is something wrong?" Emily's throat tightened. She wanted to deny it, but her mother's voice carried too much tenderness. Tears pricked her eyes as she whispered, "I just feel invisible here. Dad doesn't see me. And Marcus, he makes me feel like I exist." Linda's face fell, sorrow mingling with concern. She held her daughter close, not saying much, but the silence spoke volumes. Emily cried quietly into her mother's shoulder, ashamed and confused. The next day, Marcus approached Emily while she sat outside beneath the fading evening sky. His expression was troubled, as though he had made a decision he did not want to face. "Emily," he said quietly, "I need to talk to you." She looked up, her heart pounding. His eyes held a sadness she hadn't seen before. "I shouldn't have let things go this far," Marcus said, his voice steady but heavy. "You're young, and you deserve someone your own age, someone who can love you without shadows. What we've shared, it's real, but it's not right." Emily's chest ached, the words cutting deeper than she expected. "But you understand me," she whispered. "You're the only one who does." "I know," Marcus admitted, his jaw tightening. "And that's exactly why I need to step back. If I care about you, and I do, I can't let you carry this weight. It will only hurt you in the end." Her eyes filled with tears, and she shook her head, desperate to hold on to the fragile connection they had built. "Please don't leave me like everyone else has." Marcus closed his eyes for a moment, then reached out, resting a hand gently on her shoulder. "Emily, listen to me. You are strong. You are more than what people fail to see. But if you let this, us, define you, it will steal your future. Don't let my presence become your shadow." Emily bit her lip, trying to hold back sobs. The finality in his voice told her that no matter how much she longed for things to be different, the line had been drawn. The next morning, Marcus packed his bags. Robert shook his hand stiffly, his suspicion unspoken but simmering. Linda kept her composure, though her eyes lingered with quiet worry. Emily stayed in her room, unable to watch him leave. She heard the front door close, the sound echoing like a final chapter shutting. Days turned into weeks. The house felt emptier, though Robert slowly began to change. Perhaps he had sensed more than he admitted, because he started asking Emily about her writing, making an effort to sit with her, to notice. It was awkward at first, but it was something. Emily filled her journal with words she couldn't say aloud. She wrote about loneliness, about temptation, about how easy it was to mistake attention for love. She wrote about Marcus, not by name, but as a figure who had shown her both the danger and the beauty of being seen. Late at night, when the house was quiet, she would sometimes whisper his words back to herself. "Don't let this shadow define your life." And though it hurt, though the longing still lived inside her, she began to understand. Infidelity wasn't always about crossing a physical line. Sometimes it was the heart that betrayed first, slipping into places it didn't belong. In that understanding, Emily found a bittersweet kind of strength. She had lost something, but she had also gained a truth she would carry with her forever. That being noticed could feel like love, but real love was built on something deeper, something she still had to discover for herself. And so she turned another page in her notebook, her pen moving steadily across the paper, her story continuing beyond the shadows he left behind.